Welcome back. Yes, indeed. Focusing our attention now on the Middle East. And as you've seen there, we're joined by His Excellency Michael Freeman, Ambassador of Israel to Nigeria. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program here today. Well, it was a shock. I mean, the world woke up shocking to see what was going on Saturday morning. But yes, indeed, we all want peace in the Middle East. But can you go ahead and tell us, what is the current situation now?
Good morning. Yeah, we all woke up on Saturday morning, which was the Holy Sabbath, a Jewish festival as well, to the shocking news that hundreds of Hamas terrorists had infiltrated Israel, and had gone on a murderous death rampage throughout Israel, the south of Israel, murdering men, women, and children, defiling their bodies, raping, pillaging, doing all sorts of evil things. And we now know that over 700 Israeli civilians were murdered, including 260 young people who were at a music festival. They were out partying at a music festival when these Hamas terrorists came in and massacred them in cold blood, shooting in any way. We have reports of them raping those people there and then killing them, entire families being wiped out. And also, we've seen over 3,000 rockets fired. And at this moment, this morning, we are still fighting Hamas terrorists inside Israeli territory, inside 7 different towns and villages in Israel. And we will do what we need to do to take control of these areas, to liquidate the terrorists. And then we will respond in this war that has been declared by Hamas. And we will do everything we need to protect our population and to protect our people.
Well, it's shocking. I mean, some of the revelations now that you just highlighted. But there are equally several concerns. I mean, I know that Israel will also be reviewing the situation and asking questions and how some of these things happen. But if I could just ask this before I move on, I mean, many were also wondering how those rockets were able to defy the Iron Dome and get into those cities and the areas where it landed. I'm sure that those are part of the considerations that Israel will also be considering in the long term.
Well, firstly, we will be asking some of the questions of how this happened, how these death squads managed to come into Israel and massacre our women and children. With regard to the Iron Dome is not perfect. The Iron Dome still shoots down over 90% of all of the rockets that are heading for civilian populations. And I dread to think what would have happened if we wouldn't have had the Iron Dome. 3,000 rockets, the vast majority of them have been shot down, but still some of them get through and some of them land on buildings and some of them land in the towns and villages where they're aimed. But fortunately, the level of death from those rockets has been limited. The vast majority of those deaths, in fact, 99% of those deaths so far, have been from these death squads of people who came in and deliberately targeted men, women, and children. We have stories of them going door to door, dragging children out by their hair, dragging women out by their hair, and shooting them dead in cold blood.
Well, in terms of the response by Israel, I mean, you also want to ensure that you don't have a lot more casualties in your response to this. But part of the concern, too, is how is Israel going to proceed further without getting into a street fight with IDF in Gaza, for instance?
Okay, maybe that's what we have to do. We will do everything we can to avoid civilian casualties on the Palestinian side. This is not a fight between Israel and Palestinians. This is not a fight between Israelis and Palestinians. This is a war between Israel and Hamas, a radical terror organization that has massacred Israelis and kidnapped. You shouldn't forget, they've also kidnapped over 100 Israelis, young girls, young babies, old women, 84-year-old women, 85-year-old women, 2-year-old, 6-month-old babies have been kidnapped. So we recognize the difficulty. We will do everything we can to avoid civilian casualties on the Palestinian side, but we will do everything we need to do in order to secure our population. You know, what would any country in the world do? What would Nigeria do? What would any country do faced with this invasion? You have a responsibility to keep your people safe. You have a responsibility to keep your country safe. And that's what we will do. We will now keep our people and our country safe, and we will do whatever we need to do in order to achieve that.
So how, because I mean, if that were to be the case, I mean, any country will respond and handle and ensure that their citizens are safe. But in terms of the difficulties that Israel will face moving forward on this one, I mean, I saw several possibilities and narratives and things that you may also face moving forward. For instance, it said that, look, if in the end, in the event that IDF engages in this street fight, you may have to battle with Hezbollah in the north. You could also see Palestinian militant groups in West Bank, meaning Israel may end up with this three-pronged war, and ultimately you may face a threat from Iran. Are those part of the considerations here?
Yeah, you're quite right. That is a major concern for us. We know that Iran is behind this attack by Hamas. Iran are the ones who gave permission. Iran are the ones who fund Hamas. They are doing everything they can to destabilize the region. As you say, they are also backing Hezbollah in Lebanon. They're backing other terror groups in the West Bank. They're backing terror groups in Syria. And Iran is doing everything because they don't want to see progress. They don't want to see peace. They want to see death and destruction. And we will do what we need. We hope that Hezbollah and we hope that other groups understand that we do not want any engagement. We do not want any war in any other areas. But if Iran gives the instruction, Hezbollah join, then we will fight on that front as well. We are prepared. We will defend our population. We will defend our citizens, and we will make sure that these terrible scenes. And you know, I've chosen not to share the photos, but I'm sure some of your viewers would have seen on social media some of the horrific photos of old women gunned down at bus stops, grandmas gunned down in the streets, young babies shot, children murdered in front of their parents. All of these are going around, women and children and young people at a music festival, gunned down and blown up. This is what we've dealt with, and we will do what we need to do now to protect our population. And this war was started by Hamas, and we will end this war.
Well, Your Excellency, you know, a good number of people would wonder, I mean, just as my colleague asked you, it's rather shocking that it even happened because there was no hush-hush anywhere about it. So one of the questions that some people might be asking is, what is the root of this whole conflict in the first place? Because unless there was some kind of background to it, a good number of people will be wondering, why would Hamas or whoever just get up and attack another nation without cause? What, in your opinion, brought this whole conversation up in the first place?
Look, it's a great question, and for many people it's difficult to understand. But Hamas's ideology and their raison d'etre, the reason they exist, is to kill Israelis. They state that. They said that their aim, their life, their motivation is to kill Israelis and to destroy Israel. So they saw an opportunity that they felt they could take in order to come across the border and slaughter and murder women and children, because that's what they believe, that's what they do, that's who they are. And therefore, they don't need an excuse. They'll make an excuse up, they'll lie, they'll tell whatever they want to do to make up some story. But the reality is their ideology and their reason they were formed is to wipe Israel out and to destroy Israel and to kill Israelis.
Well, issues around the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the rest of them have been on for many, many decades. So there are a good number of people who wonder whether or not this has one thing or the other to do with occupation, of a particular territory that some people feel shouldn't be, a place where Israel should be and that Israel is. Can you give us a background to that?
Absolutely. I think there are two key things to say here. Number one is that in 2005, Israel left Gaza. Everybody said to us, you need to leave. We took the decision to leave. We took out every single soldier, every single troop, every single Israeli citizen, as they're referred to often as settlers. We took every single one of them out of Gaza. From 2005, there has not been any occupation in Gaza. There's not been a single soldier, single settler, single anybody living in Gaza. So, to talk about occupation is a myth. To talk about that is just not true. That's the first thing to say. The second thing to say is that on this issue, this is not about Israel or Palestine. You and I can disagree, you and I can agree. Many people can talk and disagree or agree about the issue of Israel and Palestine. But what we saw over the last 48 hours is not about that. It's about humanity and evil. It is about people who have deliberately targeted women and children. Let's make no mistake. Let's be very, very clear. These death squads came in and shot people at bus stops. They went into houses. They went door to door, murdering and massacring women and children. They went door to door, raping and pillaging and defiling bodies. They took people back into Gaza. We know that they have beheaded people. This is base evil. This is not about Israel and Palestine. This is about humanity versus evil. We haven't seen this except in places like ISIS and Daesh. This is the type of level we're talking about, and the whole world condemns that, and the whole world is condemning Hamas for what we've seen.
Well, most certainly condemnable activity from world leaders all over the world. But one other very concerning thing, which you are, of course, also aware of, you may want to give us figures to it. We understand that there have been kidnappings also on the other side from Israel. How many Israelis are you aware of have been kidnapped or been held as prisoners of war on the other side? And what's the plan to bring them back home?
Firstly, these are kidnapped. These are not prisoners of war. A 6-month-old baby is not a prisoner of war. A 4-year-old girl is not a prisoner of war. An 85-year-old grandma is not a prisoner of war. These are kidnapping. These have been kidnapped. They are kidnapped victims. We do not yet know the exact number. We know it's over 100. Over 100 Israelis have been kidnapped, have been taken into Gaza against international law, against humanitarian law, against Islamic law. We should also put that out there. What we've seen over the last 48 hours, with no questions, have been crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity. These are crimes against all the major religions, against Christianity, against Judaism, against Islam. These are terrible things that we have seen. And obviously, our priority is to bring our citizens back. To bring back those people back from within Gaza, where they're being held, where we don't know what's happening to them, but certainly Hamas's history would imply that they are not going to be held in good conditions. They will not have any access to medical or any other or any international Red Cross. These people have been kidnapped. They are being held, and we will do everything to bring them back. It's a terrible tragedy.
Indeed, and very condemnable. Your Excellency, part of the report suggests that the reason for this attack by Hamas is to derail the Middle East policy of President Joe Biden, diplomatic policy to be precise, with Saudi Arabia. What's contained in this Middle East policy that has left out Palestinian and is unsettling Hamas leaders?
Look, it's a good question. We've seen that Israel over the last 3 to 4 years has made significant progress. We've developed relations with the United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, with Morocco, with Sudan. There are certainly conversations with Saudi Arabia, and this scares people who hate. And Iran hates, and Iran wants to destabilize the entire region. Hamas, who want us all dead, who want me dead, who want my children dead, my wife dead, my parents, my friends, my relatives, they want every Israeli dead. For them, progress is a bad thing. And therefore, they will do anything to try and derail the peace process and to derail normalizations between Israel and our neighbors. We won't let that happen. We will continue to move forward. We will continue to reach out our hand in peace. And we won't let this Iranian-backed terror organization stop having a better future for me and for my children and for my grandchildren.
If the Gaza or the exit of Israel, so to speak, from Gaza since 2005 has not resolved this, and the peace process by President Joe Biden is not satisfactory. What do you think will be the enduring solution that will stop this, continuing tension between Gaza, Palestinians, and Israel?
Well, we need to destroy Hamas. Hamas as a terror organization that is committed to making sure that Israel is destroyed, to making sure there is no peace process. Hamas doesn't want a peace process. Hamas wants no accommodation with Israel. Hamas wants no end. And if we all want a better future, and all of us want peace, and all of us want an accommodation between the Palestinians, we need to make sure Hamas don't exist to be part of that. Hamas will do everything to destroy it. We've seen throughout the years their bus bombings. We've seen throughout the years their terrorism throughout Israel. And this is their worst ever attempt at doing that. And therefore, we need to make sure that they aren't part of this conversation anymore. We can't talk about peace and we can't talk about moving forward with an organization, a terror organization, that is raping, that is killing, that is slaughtering children and slaughtering women. There's no compromise there. These people have no part in any dialogue. They have no part in any decent human society. And we need to make sure that Hamas, and we're being very specific here about Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, need to be destroyed, and they need to be destroyed in a way that they can never do this again.
I know that Israel did ask that the UN Security Council condemn the scenario that played out and labeled it as war crimes. So do you have any updates on that, and how significant will that be for Israel?
We hope that any decent and every decent country in the world will condemn this. This is such a clear war crime, probably a crime against humanity that we have seen. I unfortunately have seen horrific pictures that I would not want to show on TV and to show your viewers of things that were done. Ironically, these were recorded by Hamas. Hamas are the ones who recorded them doing these things. They've posted them up onto social media, and they're proud of when they go around and they are doing these terrible things, where they are proud of the fact that they are defiling human bodies. They are proud of the fact that they are shooting children in front of their parents. There's a horrific scene of a family with 3 children, the first child being shot in front of the parents, and the young children and the parents forced to watch this, of Israelis being beheaded. And we're seeing this being posted by Hamas. So we expect everybody to condemn this in a loud and clear voice, because when we see radical terrorism inside Israel, it never stays there. We've seen it with ISIS, we've seen it with Boko Haram, we see it with ISWAP, we see it with all of those terror organizations. And therefore, anybody who wants to fight against this terror needs to condemn it in a clear voice, because if not, it will come to their countries as well. We've seen how that works.
All right, so we have to thank you for coming on, Your Excellency Michael Freeman, Ambassador of Israel to Nigeria. Thank you for your time and all the best to you.
Thank you very much.
All right, but we also did have a statement from Nigeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The press statement was titled, "The federal government of Nigeria calls for de-escalation of hostilities between Israel and Hamas." The federal government of Nigeria is deeply concerned about the outbreak of hostilities between Israel and Hamas in the early hours of Saturday, 7th October 2023, and calls for de-escalation and ceasefire. The cycle of violence and retaliation that the current escalation has assumed only serves to perpetuate an unending cycle of pain and suffering for the civilian population that bear the brunt of every conflict. The federal government of Nigeria therefore calls on both sides to exercise restraint, prioritize the safety of civilians, and give room for humanitarian considerations. We are therefore calling for a peaceful resolution of the conflict through dialogue. That is signed by Ambassador Yusuf Tuga ON, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Well, let's go on now and take a look at some comments coming from you. This email about the off-cycle election, the governorship elections, comes from Joseph Oludare. He says, to start with, Nigerians at the subnational units going for off-cycle elections must step up to be informed about how their states are governed. How many of these governors standing election have signed into law an unrealistic retirement package or have accepted such bad laws without amending them? How many of them governors have published the revenue and the expenditure of their states for the time spent in office? It's not just about re-election, but accountability for what has been entrusted to them in the last 4 years. Moreover, INEC cannot be accused of poor election management without political parties putting forward adequate agents that will monitor and report irregularities. Achieving credible polls is beyond counting and registering ballots. It requires stakeholders, the INEC, political parties, security agencies, citizens, and CEOs doing the right thing at the right time.
Well, this one is from Taiwo Olokbade. He says, I agree with your guest that INEC chairman should not be appointed by Mr. President. There is high possibility that he or she may want to be sympathetic to the government in power. The Minister for Women Affairs, Uju Kennedy, sounds like she's on top of her job. She needs to move with the speed of light to assist women across the country who suffer more from every adversity. God bless Nigeria.
Professor Enakena in a tweet says, we must vote leaders who must realize that we live in very hard times and Nigerians have become more vulnerable and objectively more diversified and vigilant than they've always been. So our governors must respond to the demands of building a new Nigeria that will presumably curtail a probable decadent society where her leaders are visionless. Another tweet from TT Tor says it'll take a strong-headed leader with very little interest in power retention to implement the needed policies that will return power to the Nigerian people. Unfortunately, we don't have that yet. The corrupt system in place is scientific.
Indeed, needs to be studied.
Unfortunately.
That is, well, that's going to be an interesting one because, I mean, you know what they say about eternal vigilance. So we all cannot afford to drop the ball at any point in time. Well, that is the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you again here bright and early on Sunrise Daily. I am Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Well, thank you for watching. We'll be back again soon. I am Bukola Koka. Bye for now.
The key word today is vigilance, okay? Don't forget that. I'm Aya Makinde. Have a wonderful day.